When I was a child, whenever something sad or joyful happened, I would always visit traditional bakers in the neighborhood rather than my family members. I still remember the thrill of saving up my tiny allowance to buy a beautiful pecan pie, or the special feeling when those bakers sneaked me some complimentary cookies, saying,
Here's a little extra for our favorite customer who always eats so enthusiastically.
I decided to cut ties with my family, who always belittled and mistreated me, seemingly deriving pleasure from my pain. My name is Melissa. I was an office worker when I turned 30. I was in charge of accounting at a small company, going through my daily routine quietly. My days were simple and uneventful, but they were brightened by my love of traditional sweets. Ever since I was little, I have always preferred apple pies and fudge brownies over fancy cakes or cream puffs. I would save up my allowance and run to the neighborhood bakery, excited to buy those comforting, traditional treats. Among traditional sweets, my favorite was pecan pie. Pieces of pecan pie brought a comforting sense of satisfaction and a warm, homey feeling, and they looked like little treasures to me. They were small enough to fit in a child's hand, cost about the same as a slice of fancy cake, and embody the richness. To enjoy them in the best setting possible, I often attended coffee cupping sessions. The women I shared those sessions with often remarked,
"It's wonderful to enjoy coffee with someone young like you."
Yet, I was just a 30-year-old with an overwhelming passion for traditional sweets. As expected, my fiancé Adam was a confectioner specializing in traditional sweets. His family runs a long-established bakery shop called Golden Willow Bakery, and he was training to take over the business.
It's hard to concentrate when you stare like that.
Adam said with a wry smile as I watched him closely while he worked on a new pecan pie design at home.
I just can't get over how your big, sausage-like fingers can make such delicate treats.
Hey, now.
Despite his bear-like build, Adam created intricate and stunning sweets. The contrast was both funny and endearing. I was also completely in love with the gentle flavors of his creations, which reflected his calm and kind personality. I was happy surrounded by his warm heart and my love of traditional sweets. I couldn't imagine anything but a sparkling future for our married life. However, not everyone shared my enthusiasm for the marriage.
Wait, a confectioner? So he makes a living selling $3 sweets? How do you even survive on that?
My sister, Laura, asked bluntly when Adam came to my family home to introduce himself after we got engaged.
Laura, that's rude.
I said that, frowning in disapproval, but Adam remained composed and answered her question in a calm tone.
If you're not familiar with it, I can see how it might seem strange. We often sell apple pies in bulk as gifts, and some of our smaller items can sell for about $5 each.
$5? For traditional sweets? Cake is way better for that price.
Adam could only manage a strained smile at her childish remark. Meanwhile, I felt my face flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. My parents simply watched with amused expressions.
Please forgive Laura's rudeness. She has always been used to eating only the finest and most expensive foods.
Oh, I see.
Frustrated by my father's clueless and equally rude comment, I couldn't hold back any longer.
Dad. That's so embarrassing.
Why?
When I criticized my father, he became visibly irritated.
You've got no palate, always settling for cheap tastes. Adam, are you sure you want to marry someone like Melissa? She can't tell the difference between flavors beyond sweet and not sweet.
Exactly. Melissa is the type who'd rather stay home eating instant noodles than go out for Italian. Such a strange girl.
My mother chimed in cheerfully, joining my father in belittling me. Laura smirked, enjoying watching it. I felt humiliated. I had never wanted Adam to meet such an embarrassing family. As I sat there, my face was burning with shame. Adam smiled warmly, as if shielding me from their cruelty.
Melissa has a very refined palate. I always have her taste my trial creations first. My parents say that anything she deems delicious always becomes a hit. They're thrilled with her feedback.
He kept his kind smile, but his eyes were icy as he gazed down at my parents. They both flinched at the sight. My father twitched nervously and mumbled,
"Oh, well, that's good to hear."
and hid his face behind the newspaper. As this dreadful interaction made it clear, my parents only ever doted on my younger sister, Laura, who was 5 years younger than me. Since we were kids, they preferred Laura's lively personality and charming looks over my quieter, more peculiar interests, like visiting traditional bakeries. Still, when we were little, it was just small things, like Laura's preferences being prioritized. As we grew older, Laura seemed to revel in being favored, going so far as to manipulate situations to make herself look better at my expense. When she broke a vase, she'd cry and blame me. Any chores I did well became credited to her. Being clever and manipulative, Laura was adored as the perfect daughter, while I was labeled the dull, burdensome one. Eventually, my parents' actions centered entirely around her, and the three of them began treating me as a punchline for their amusement. As my mother said, I would rather have eaten instant noodles alone than go out for Italian with my family. This was because even though I had a shellfish allergy, they always ordered seafood pizza and pasta right in front of me. Compared to that, staying home with instant noodles was far more appealing. Despite knowing all this, Adam still insisted that they were my family, and that was why he came to meet them. Furthermore, he defended me without hesitation when they belittled me. It made me so happy. However, my family couldn't stand seeing him protect and love me.
Who does he think he is, acting all high and mighty when he's here to marry my daughter?
My father fumed after Adam left, downing drink after drink. It wasn't because he had held back out of courtesy while Adam was there. He was simply too intimidated by a man bigger than him to say anything.
A confectioner? Adam knows nothing about the real world. Probably he doesn't make much money either.
Well, he doesn't have an impressive career like you, dear.
My mother said as she handed more alcohol to my father, using the opportunity to lift him up while putting Adam down. Also, she glared at me. Laura, who was lounging on the couch and idly scrolling through her phone, chimed in.
Seriously, you're not even that great, Melissa, and you have terrible taste in men.
Adam is a wonderful person.
As I muttered under my breath, my father's face twitched with annoyance.
Oh, now you're talking back to your parents? Think you're all high and mighty now, huh?
That's not what I meant.
It's okay, Dad. She can't help it. A loser like her can only attract a guy like that.
Laura, you're so kind to defend your sister.
It was not even close. I bit my tongue though, knowing that protesting would only earn me more insults. Laura grinned wickedly and pressed on.
I mean, that chubby guy is willing to marry an old maid like Melissa. Let's just hand her over before he changes his mind. It'd be so embarrassing if I still have such an unmarried, hopeless sister hanging around when I marry my successful friends.
That's true. We wouldn't want you burdened by Melissa.
My father sneered, glaring at me.
Well, Adam and you are a perfect match at the bottom of the barrel. I'll approve the marriage. Just make sure you don't get dumped by that chubby guy. If he leaves you, there's no place for you here anymore.
My mother and Laura looked at me with smug satisfaction, clearly enjoying themselves.
Since you're getting married, don't expect to rely on us anymore. No money, no help with kids. You'll have to figure it out with Adam's parents, and don't come crying to us if they work you to the bone.
Well, whatever happens, as long as you've got your precious sweets, you'll be happy, right?
Their crude laughter echoed through the house. Clenching my trembling fists, I left without a word. What a foolish, vulgar family they were. I always knew it, but the disappointment still stung. At least I could cut ties without any lingering regrets. They were only obsessed with appearances and trends. They had no idea what kind of family I was marrying into. From that day until the wedding, I didn't return home. I did check with my parents to see if they had appropriate attire for the wedding, but they brushed me off, saying,
Why would we go out of our way for your wedding?
So, I left them to their own devices. Finally, the wedding day arrived. After a private ceremony at a well-known local church, we moved to the hotel for the reception. In the dressing room, I changed from my wedding gown into a colorful evening dress and entered the reception hall with Adam, who is now my husband, escorting me. The room was filled with warm applause and smiling faces, and I glanced toward the back of the room. There, my parents and Laura sat, pale-faced, clutching their cheap outfits, not clapping at all. Their reaction was understandable. After all, over 300 guests had gathered for our reception, far beyond what they could have imagined. Moreover, the seating chart was filled with impressive titles like CEO or state representative. Those were people my parents could never hope to meet in their daily lives. That was because Adam's parents was running the prestigious bakery shop Golden Willow Bakery, a hidden gem known among those in the know. Their traditional techniques and flavors, passed down since the 1800s, had earned them a devoted following. The shop's reputation was so solid that people would say, if you bring their sweets, you're guaranteed to impress. Adam's parents were well loved in the community, and when word got out that their son was getting married, those who wished to attend, like prominent figures or neighbors, poured in one after another. The result was that grand reception. My family couldn't understand the situation, as they looked down on me as a plain and unremarkable daughter and Adam as a slightly chubby confectioner fiancé.
What is this? No one told us about this.
As soon as the state representative's toast ended and the mingling began, my parents and Laura rushed to us with frantic energy. Feigning ignorance, I tilted my head and asked, "About what?"
I mean, no one said it would be such a lavish wedding. How can a confectioner with no money or status afford this? Don't come crying to us later if you end up broke. That's embarrassing.
Oh, it seems you don't know much about where your daughter is marrying into.
Yikes!
My parents yelped as they turned to see the source. That was a distinguished older gentleman. Their faces grew even paler as they recognized him.
Oh my, you're Mr. Bridges.
Right, the man was indeed Mr. Bridges, who had just delivered the toast. Even my clueless parents knew of him. He was a highly respected politician admired by the community. Mr. Bridges directed a calm smile at my parents.
The pies from Adam's family shop, Golden Willow Bakery, had long been a celebrated symbol of good fortune in this region. My family had made it a tradition since my grandfather's time to have those pies the night before every election.
Oh yeah, is that so?
The taste is exceptional. They're also a popular choice as gifts. Around here, business executives bring Golden Willow Bakery's pies to important negotiations.
I didn't know that.
As my parents nervously chuckled, Mr. Bridges' eyes gleamed coldly.
And you refer to the heir of such an esteemed establishment as a poor confectioner?
No way, we didn't mean it like that.
Mr. Bridges' voice carried clearly across the room. The other guests also started giving my parents very cold stares.
Melissa, You must have had a hard time growing up with parents so ignorant.
he said with a sigh.
Did he call you Melissa?
My parents' eyes widened as they stared at me, shocked to hear him address me casually. What they didn't know was that his wife had long been one of my friends at the coffee cupping sessions, and I had even been invited to their home on multiple occasions. I had no obligation to tell them that, as they had always looked down on me.
It's all right, Mr. Bridges. My parents has already told me that we'll be cutting ties after my marriage. Starting today, we're strangers.
Seriously?
My parents looked genuinely astonished. Did they not remember being the ones to say that?
I see. Melissa, you're an adult now. It's important to surround yourself with the right people. Even blood ties aren't worth maintaining if they're toxic. It's best to cut ties with those who might drag you down.
Your advice is always so wise, Mr. Bridges.
Oh, you think so?
While Mr. Bridges laughed heartily, Adam's parents approached with cheerful smiles.
Mr. Bridges, thank you so much for coming today.
They exchanged friendly conversation, and my parents could only watch in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Laura was gnawing on her glittering manicured nails, glaring at me with resentment. For the rest of the reception, my parents sat awkwardly in the vast hall, clearly out of place. I didn't write any letter of thanks to them. Instead, I expressed my gratitude to Adam, who had chosen me as his wife, and to his wonderful parents for welcoming me so warmly. This further embarrassed my parents, and they left the venue hastily without so much as a goodbye when the reception ended. Laura stayed behind, her eyes burning with anger as she continued to glare at me. Our extravagant and beautiful wedding came to an end. The next morning, when Adam and I were enjoying a late breakfast, still basking in the afterglow of the ceremony, the doorbell rang. From the gap between the curtains, I saw Laura with a dark expression, accompanied by a man in a suit I didn't recognize. I had a bad feeling but couldn't ignore it, so I opened the door with Adam by my side. Then, Laura burst into tears, sobbing loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear.
Melissa, how could you steal my boyfriend like that?
What are you talking about?
Shocked by her accusation, I stood frozen as she shoved past me and clung to Adam.
Hey. What's going on?
Adam, his face a mix of panic and confusion, tried to pry her off, but she clung to him with surprising strength.
Adam, how could you? After all the love we shared, how could you cheat on me with Melissa?
What are you talking about?
In front of Adam, who was flustered, and me, who was utterly dumbfounded, a man in glasses and a suit stepped forward and thrust a photo at us.
I'm Mark, an attorney hired by Laura. Is this you in the photo?
The picture showed Adam lying shirtless on a bed next to Laura, who was similarly undressed.
Are you serious? Why me?
Adam exclaimed in shock.
This picture was taken the day we affirmed our love at the hotel. And yet, you went ahead and had that big fancy wedding with her to spite me. It's too much.
No way.
Laura collapsed dramatically, sobbing at Adam's feet, while he stood frozen in disbelief. Mark glared at him with unrelenting disdain.
What you've done is the lowest of the low, hurting an innocent woman.
No way. Melissa, you believe me, don't you? You know I'd never do something this awful.
Adam pleaded, looking at me desperately. Surely, my answer was already decided.
Of course I do. There's no way Adam could ever do something so despicable.
Melissa.
Adam's eyes welled with relief as I firmly stood by him. Laura's expression twisted with rage.
You're such a fool, Melissa. How can you deny it when there's photographic evidence?
When was that photo taken?
I asked calmly.
Huh.
Her eyes widened at my pointed question.
It was 6 months ago.
What the exact date?
Well, September 15th. Why does that matter?
Oh, September 15th, huh? Adam, does that date ring any bells?
September 15th. Oh,
Understanding dawned on Adam, and he let out a chuckle, the tension draining from his face. I couldn't help but laugh aloud too, at how absurdly amateurish this whole setup was.
What's so funny? How come you are laughing in this situation? Are you crazy?
Because there's no way Adam could have been at a hotel with you on September 15th.
Why?
He was in France the entire month of September, teaching at a confectionery school.
What?
Laura's jaw dropped so wide it seemed it might unhinge. If she'd named a different month, proving his innocence might have been trickier, but choosing September, that was just dumb luck for me. With his airtight alibi clear, Adam wrapped a reassuring arm around my shoulder.
well, technically, I was there assisting my mentor, who was the one officially teaching. My mentor can confirm I was there.
This can't be.
As for the photo, it's so poorly edited. You just used one of Adam's wedding photos from yesterday. No one lies on a bed with their hair perfectly styled.
Oh no.
It was hard to tell if Laura was just incredibly dumb or if she had genuinely underestimated me to such an extent that I wouldn't notice such blatant flaws. Probably both.
Hey, what's going on here? You said this would be easy money.
Mark muttered with his previous air of professionalism crumbling as he leaned toward Laura. I smiled sweetly at him.
You're an attorney, right?
Well,
Or you're not. I'm pretty sure pretending to be an attorney is a crime.
really?
Mark was startled by the word crime and leapt up like a frog.
I didn't know anything. I was tricked by Laura.
That's awful, darling. You were just as into it as I was.
Oh, how touching it was. Laura calling Mark darling suggested they were quite close. As the two argued like squabbling children, I watched with cold detachment. Meanwhile, Adam quietly called an attorney friend of his for help. Thanks to the skilled attorney he summoned, it became clear that Laura had fabricated the affair to extort money from Adam. Laura couldn't stand the thought of her failure of a sister marrying into a family with wealth and prestige. She'd also hoped that Adam would fall for her looks, dump me, and marry her instead. As for Mark, who claimed to be an attorney, he turned out to be Laura's ex-boyfriend. Moreover, he was a married man. Despite having a beloved boyfriend, who was an elite professional, Laura had been on again off again with Mark, engaging in countless affairs. Adam and I decided not to press charges for impersonating an attorney, but instead, we exposed everything to Mark's wife. No wonder she was furious and promptly filed for divorce while demanding substantial amount of property division. When we informed Laura's elite boyfriend of her behavior, he was already fed up with her selfishness and ended things without a second thought. Humiliated by being dumped so easily, Laura reportedly went on a rampage, destroying everything in her parents' house.
Melissa, can't you introduce a good man to Laura? Adam must know someone perfect for her.
I couldn't help but sigh at the pathetic sight of my parents. They were battered from Laura's tantrums, yet still spouting such absurd requests. Laura was growling like a wild animal in frustration.
Adam's friends are all upstanding people. None of them would suit a woman like her.
How dare you? Just because you married rich, don't get cocky.
Dad, we don't need her. I can find someone way better than that fatty.
Wait, Melissa. You're such a kind sister. Laura just got carried away. Please forgive her. Oh, by the way, I want you to introduce me to Miss Bridges.
My mother chimed in, pleading shamelessly. Ignoring their selfish cries, I calmly pulled out my phone.
Hello, is this the police?
What?
The mere mention of the police sent my parents recoiling in fear, and their faces turned pale.
But we're family, right?
Shouting in such pitiful voices, they fled like startled rabbits.
Funny, I wonder who said I wasn't family anymore.
I muttered, pocketing my phone, which hadn't been connected to anyone. In the end, Laura's reputation was ruined by the rumors of her humiliating behavior at my wedding and her involvement with another woman's husband. Unable to date any decent man, she once again targeted a married man. My parents had squandered their money, dreaming that Laura would one day marry into wealth, yet only to end up like this. With me no longer around as their scapegoat, the three of them now spend their days bitterly hurling insults at one another. As for me, I've been freed from that toxic family and am living a dream life surrounded by my new family and traditional sweets. I left my job after getting married and now manage the finances for Adam's family business. Thanks to the steady career I've built, I'm proud of myself for being able to contribute meaningfully. The sweets from Golden Willow Bakery are genuinely delicious, even without bias. We decided to share those flavors nationwide through online sales, and the response was overwhelming, with the demand far exceeding production capacity. Adam's parents and Adam himself now refer to me as the family's good luck charm and spoil me with sweets every day. With my favorite sweets in one hand, watching the process of creating them, and selling them to happy customers, I'm living in paradise.
This is heaven on earth.
I sighed blissfully, sampling a new creation, and Adam set down a tray of pecan pie inspired by hydrangeas in front of me.
It's so easy to keep my wife happy.
It sure is.
Today, once again, I savored the sweetness of my favorite treats and the happiness that came with them.